Hello, hello. My name is April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and this is the podcast. Today I have Reena Vokoun with us from California. Reena, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let everyone know what you're doing?
Sounds great. Thank you, April. My name is Reena Vokoun, and I am the founder and CEO of a health and wellness company called Passionfit. I am based in San Diego, California, where I live with my husband. I'm also a mom of two boys, and I focus on empowering women to flourish both personally and professionally through wellness. That is the mission of the company Passionfit. I'm also an author of a book called The Wellness Empowered Woman. I'm a TEDx speaker, and I do personal and professional development coaching and consulting. And my focus is on work-life balance. I started working from home about 7 years ago when I left corporate America and my job at Google to start my own company. And I know we'll get into this in more detail, April, but I think working from home just has so many advantages and benefits. And obviously, most people who have jobs that are able to be done from home have been also working remotely over the course of the last 15 plus months in the pandemic. And I just think the flexibility that it gives you, especially if you do have children or other responsibilities outside of work, can just really ease your stress and anxiety and give you more control over your day and your schedule. And that's probably the biggest reasons why I love working from home and why it's been a really nice benefit when I started my own company.
So, Reena, we are experiencing a little bit of video lag, and I just want to talk about that as a part of the the work from home thing. So we are both working from home today. Our kids are both at school. We have a lot of things in common, and our husbands are both also working from home. My husband just logged into a meeting, so we might have a little bit of lag in today's video, but hopefully the audio will come through. So let's just go ahead and power through. How
Okay.
many kiddos do you have?
So my husband and I have two boys who
Two.
are
Okay.
10 and 13. Yes.
Okay. And you did say that. I have a 10-year-old also, and then I've got a 9-year-old and she just turned 6. So,
Oh, wow. Or a
and
busy mom.
were your kids able to be in school at all last year?
So they were for part of the year. They were virtual for most of it. And then my
Hmm.
younger one, who was in elementary school in fourth grade last year, was able to go back 5 days a week at the like tail end of the year. So the last like 3, 4 months.
Hmm.
And then my older son, who was an eighth grader in middle school last year, he was only able to go twice a week because with the older kids, they tended to do more of that hybrid schedule. So he was
Yeah.
still virtual for some classes. And then he was going on campus about 2 days a week. And he thankfully was able to have his eighth grade graduation outside on the football field at the local high school.
Oh,
So
good.
they got a little bit of normalcy, but I think probably for your kids as well, it was definitely a tough year for everybody.
Yeah, we were home all last year and we just put them back in.
Wow.
Actually, what day is today? We just put them back in yesterday after a quarantine. We've already been through it. Like there's already been an exposure and just, waited it out. We tested a bunch to make
Uh-huh.
sure we were good. And I just
Yeah.
think that's the nature of, this year. It's one of the hardest like decision making processes as far as like what's the best thing to do and everything that we've ever been through, I think, as parents. But here we are.
Yeah. Here we are. I agree with you. Yeah, we've also had some positive cases. It's only been a week since our kids have been back in school
Yep.
full time. And it happens, and I agree that as a parent, you're trying to find that balance of you want them to have a sense of normalcy and social interaction and being able to learn and engage in the classroom as they should. But at the same time, their health, you always feel like it's constantly at risk and you don't know what is the right balance. So I think we're all going through it together and just figuring it out as we go. So I completely empathize with you.
So let's talk a little bit about your past job. You mentioned Google, but I know you've done quite a few different things. Just so you know, I also am a graduate of the University of Wisconsin, but I was at River Falls, and I noticed in your bio that was it Madison? Which
At
which
Madison,
school?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I grew up in southeastern Minnesota, not too far from there.
Yes, I was born and raised in Wisconsin, so I'm a fellow Midwesterner. I've been a Californian for over 20 years, but yeah, I always love my Midwestern roots and love meeting other people from that part of the country.
Do you have family that still lives there now?
So my in-laws still live there. Yeah, my whole side of the family has over the last, 20 plus years, everybody has relocated to Southern California.
Okay.
And that was actually one of the reasons my family and I moved we've been in Silicon Valley for almost 20 years, just moved from the Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area to San Diego just this summer, literally about 2 months ago. And the whole point of it was to be closer to family because my parents and all my siblings and all the nieces and nephews and cousins are all down here. But we
Oh,
do
well,
still
that's
get back
fantastic.
to Wisconsin to see my in-laws. Yeah.
Wow. Well, what brought you to, or I guess what led you to leave Google? Or, it sounds like you probably had a good job there. Why did you want to leave?
Yeah, so it was a tough choice and it took me 2 years to really get the courage to leave. And it wasn't because I didn't like my job. I had a fantastic job. I loved working in digital media and tech. Had a great team, had a great management team, very supportive. I think what it was for me was just, experiencing burnout like so many people do. I know so many people are experiencing this in my book. I also talk about this in my TEDx talk. I just hit a point of managing two young kids. My kids are 10 and 13 now, but they were, a baby and a toddler then. My husband also works in tech. He actually came to Google a few years after I was there. And so we overlapped for about 4 years. So we had both of us kind of in the rat race in Silicon Valley, working in these very demanding tech jobs with two young children. And it started to affect our health. It started to affect, our overall well-being, our happiness, our stress levels, our sleep. There were just so many things that were being impacted by it. And it was hard. And I think it was hard for me because like many women, I am, somebody who puts a lot of pressure on myself. I want to do well. I'm a type A personality. I'm a people pleaser. And that can be a recipe for burnout when you stop to take care of yourself because you're so busy taking care of everyone and everything else in your life. And that wasn't obviously just in the job, but then most importantly, taking care of two young children and wanting to be hands-on and wanting to be there for them because my mom was a stay-at-home mom growing up. And so I've always found this conflict of wanting, and she's a phenomenal mom. And I want to, be that hands-on mom to my kids that my mom was to me. But I also have always wanted to have a really successful career like my dad. Like I want to do both. My dad is an amazing parent as well. And he, had a great corporate career and then also went into entrepreneurship. And so I have these two great role models, but I'm one person, with the support of my husband, and the two of us are trying to be these dual career couples with hands-on parenting as well. And that can be challenging. So that's
Yep.
really where the decision came from to leave and to start something of my own so that I could have more flexibility. I could determine where I work, when I travel, when I don't. And I didn't always have that control previously.
So rather than taking a remote position with a corporate job, you left entirely and started your own thing. Was there a transition period where you're trying to do both?
There was, yeah. And I definitely looked at, and, I did have a little bit of work from home opportunities when I was at Google. I will say that Google, as a large tech company, definitely tried to provide as much flexibility as was possible. So I, went to 80% after my younger son was born, once I had two kids. And what that afforded me was the ability to leave the office at about 3 o'clock every day. So I could pick up my kids from school, take them to soccer practice, do all of that stuff. But and then I did work from home on Fridays most of the time. But what I
Mhm.
found was while that was the best setup from the outside that I could have for a corporate job, I was still working 150%. And I would still be up late on my computer dealing with client issues at midnight or 1 in the morning and have to get up and do it all over again. And I was taking a pay cut, right? And my vacation was prorated. And so there's pros and cons to it. I'm glad I did it. I'm very grateful that Google was flexible with me and gave me that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think, yeah, so there's, it was a wonderful setup. But I just knew that as my kids kept getting older, they were needing me more in different ways. And I just wanted to be around more. And you could try to work remote from, different companies, but I found, at least in my line of work, being client facing in business development and sales, there were some work from home jobs, but then you'd have a lot of travel. And so that's where I found, yes, I could go try to find a work from home job somewhere else or go part time. But having my own company really did allow me the complete flexibility that I wanted. And I was starting to kind of pursue some things while I was still at Google. Like I started writing a blog about health and wellness and work-life balance. I started a YouTube channel and started to develop video content. And I was very open with my boss and my management team about where my passions and interests were and some of the things that I was doing. So when I decided to leave, it came as no surprise. And everybody was really supportive and really understanding. So I'm very thankful for that.
Now, it sounds like you said you were in like the business development and sales side. How did that, I mean, did you basically just start from scratch to start your company? Like, was there any crossover for you?
That's a good question. I mean, I did build it from scratch. I mean, and I talk about this in my book, I kind of had the idea for Passionfit because it came out of a lifelong passion that I've had for health and wellness, but also this passion that I have for career development and, continuing to, especially as a woman, women's empowerment and continuing to grow and develop in your career and, make an impact on the world. So I thought, how can I help other women who might be in my shoes, who are trying to balance their careers with their families or other life responsibilities, who may have experienced burnout and are unable to take care of their own physical and mental health in the ways that they want to, and how can I create products and services and content to help them, give them wellness tools and give them coaching and community and support, so that they can find their level of, whether it's balance or integration or whatever you want to call it. I wanted to empower other women. So first I kind of had to use myself as a guinea pig and figure it out in terms of what worked for myself and my family, and then leverage all of my years of experience working in the corporate arena, starting my company from scratch, and then pursuing a lot of different certifications that I have over the years, including nutrition and fitness and mindfulness and strengths-based coaching and all of these other things. And so I've been able to kind of take my work experience, my educational experience, both in college and graduate school, and then my certifications to develop, a philosophy and, a portfolio of offerings to help other people. And it was not easy, I will say. I mean, I didn't just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm just going to leave my job and start a company and build it from scratch. And it was super easy, because it wasn't. It was very hard. It still is challenging at times. And I think every entrepreneur can attest to that. So I want to be really honest and real and raw about the fact that it's not necessarily the easier path, but for me, it's been a very fulfilling path. And again, it's allowed me to find a way to integrate my family and my careers in a sense that I feel good about it. And I feel like I am making an impact and able to help other people.
So I have two burning questions and I don't know which one to ask first. So I'll just let you know what they both are. I'm curious when you felt like you really crashed and you hit that level of burnout. And I'm also curious if the people that you were reaching or your clients or the people that you're trying to empower with your book and everything, if they are primarily in the corporate side or if they are people who have just hit that level of burnout or who need rejuvenation in any different kind of walk of life. Like, are you targeting women in careers or women in general? Or everybody?
Yeah, that's a
Is
great
it even
question.
just women?
Yeah. So I'll start with your most recent question, and then I'll go back to the other one of when I knew. I do try to target women who are, in many cases, professional women or women who just have other things on their plates. Maybe they volunteer their time and they work for nonprofits, or they are members of the PTA in their children's school. I still consider that, being a mom is working, right? Being part of any type of organization where you're contributing is working. And then there are women who are doctors and lawyers and work in the corporate space, as well as women who are entrepreneurs. So I will say that my client base is fairly widespread in terms of reaching women in different stages of life, with kids, without kids, different stages of their careers, and then working in different capacities, both volunteer and also in paying jobs for other companies or for themselves. And so, I enjoy that because it really allows me to work with them and customize my solutions, because everybody is in such a different situation. So I think that answers your first question, right?
Yes, or the second question, and then your own experience.
Yeah. So I think for me, it was something that I didn't know right away, if I would have the courage to do it, if it was the right decision, because I think I was sort of ingrained in my head to, have this stable career. I always thought I was going to work for another company, and and I was going to rise up and continue to work hard and grow that way. But I think there was this passion that I had. And I will say that I did try many times throughout my careers to figure out how to incorporate that passion for health and wellness. And I would say the closest that I ever got to it was when I worked for Reebok, the footwear and apparel company. When my husband and I lived in Boston, we were in grad school. I was in grad school part-time at Boston University. He was at MIT full-time. And then I was working full-time in digital marketing at Reebok.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was the first time in my career. Yeah. And that was where I was really able to see, like, okay, I can leverage my marketing and business development and sales and advertising background. But at the same time, I'm working on initiatives and products and events that are all geared towards health and fitness. And I worked on a lot of the products geared towards women's running and women's health. And I loved it. And it really lit a fire in me. And honestly, the only reason that I left Reebok was because my husband and I knew that we wanted to move back to California and start a family and settle on the West Coast. And there weren't a lot of job opportunities with Reebok on the West Coast at that time. But I never forgot, the impact that I was having there and how much I was passionate about it. And so that was really nice for me to kind of build that into what I'm doing, with Passionfit now. And so I think for me, the moment I knew was, I'd been thinking about it. I had, I experienced that level of burnout. I was starting to develop health issues like insomnia and, always feeling anxious and stressed out. And I started to develop, I had allergies, but my allergies became worse and started to develop into sinus infections and allergy induced asthma. And, a lot of that stuff was exacerbated by the stress that I was under. And
Oh,
so I
yeah.
think for me, yeah, it was a lot. And I just knew then, you kind of hit a point, and we had a reorg in the company, and I was managing a portfolio of West Coast clients, which was then going to expand to national clients. And I just thought, I can't be traveling all over the country with two young kids and the stage of burnout that I'm in. And so that was the moment that I knew, like, okay, I think all these things I've been thinking about, it's been leading me to this point, and now I just know. And there really was, I don't want to say there was no turning back, because I made the decision. I started to launch my company. And did I have moments where I questioned my decision and doubted myself? Absolutely. I definitely did. I think you kind of have to go through that for a little while. But now it's been 7 years, and looking back, I'm really grateful that I made the decision that I did. And I've kept in touch with so many of my colleagues and my management team at Google. And it's just been great to continue to have their support and just to feel good that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing.
Did your husband continue to work on site at Google for the next several years before he also started working from home? Or is his
He
work from
did.
home just temporary right now?
So it's going to be, it's interesting that you asked that question, because I think whether it's for Google or lots of companies, it's the big question, right? So he was working in the office, pretty much most of that time leading up until the pandemic. I mean, every once in a while he would work from home on a Friday if we had to leave early for a trip or something like that. But other than that, he was in the office. And then all of a sudden everything shut down, in February, March of 2020. And he's been working remotely ever since then.
Yep.
And now, I think whether it's Google or Facebook or Apple or Microsoft, a lot of the big tech companies and then other companies in different industries are trying to determine, okay, do we bring people back to the office this fall? Do we hold because of the Delta variant and wait until the new year? And then in what capacity are we doing that? Do we want to respect the people that are feeling like they can make an impact and be productive working 100% remotely? Or do we want to adopt a hybrid approach where people can be in the office some days and home other days? Or are we going to mandate that everybody comes back to the office? So far, I haven't heard of any companies that are going to that extreme. I think people are offering, a mix of the two, but I think it's a huge question right now for a lot of companies, a lot of industries, and just what work and life is going to look like post-pandemic. And
Right.
I really, truly, yeah.
You
And I
truly
truly
would.
believe that it'll maybe change the game. It'll change how we think about work and life and remote work versus office work, hopefully for the better. I'm just hoping that more flexibility, more compassion, more understanding, more abilities to really integrate your work and your life in a way that works for you so that it's customized. I feel very passionately about that, and I hope that we can see more of that in the workplace once we come out of this pandemic.
I feel like it's just going to run the full gamut where some companies are going to say, you can choose. Do you want to work from home or do you want to be back in the office? It's up to you. I know where my husband's working, they have decided that when everyone returns to campus, they can work as as many as 2 days a week at home, but they are expected to be on campus at least 3 days a week. But they don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So we just have no idea, like when is he going to have to be back on site for 3 days a week? And why did they pick that? Like,
Right.
why, what if some people feel like they could do just as well, if not better, with 1 day a week on site? But apparently they're not going to
Mhm.
let that wasn't one of the options that they had when they gave, feedback. Like, there wasn't like nuance to this. They weren't asked how many days would you like to work from home. It was just, you may work from home 2 days a week and that's it. But right now you still need to work 5 days a week from home. So
Right. Yeah, it is. It's very uncertain. And I think they're going to continue to ebb and flow and change. And whatever guidelines companies have set as of right now, today in August 2021, might be very different come January 2022. And we don't
oh
know
yeah.
what that's going to look like. So I think staying flexible, staying open, and also advocating for what works for you. I think that is an important thing for everybody as professionals to keep in mind, because companies are going to want to focus on, talent acquisition and retention and employee engagement. I do a lot of work with companies and organizations, and I talk about these things because you do want to be able to make sure you're taking care of that whole person, looking at that employee not just as somebody who's producing for your company, but who is maybe a spouse or a parent or whatever roles they play in their life. And they need that support from their employers, because we all know we spend so much of our days and our lives working, and we need to be able to have that support both mentally, physically, emotionally in the workplace as well. And I think that that is something that's also changing and maybe is a potential positive that is coming out of this pandemic. Is there is this new lens and this new focus on how we look at, how we treat employees, what types of benefits we provide, and what type of flexibility we provide for them as well.
Well, with the pandemic, I feel like we still are kind of in the middle of it, because if you have a two-parent household, if you're fortunate enough to have a two-parent household, at least one of those
Mhm.
parents is probably going to need to have ultimate flexibility, because at any minute, if those kids are in school and they're exposed, they might have to quarantine for 10 days or 12 days or 14 or whatever the, state mandates or the school district has decided. And I had thought that I was going to possibly return to full-time employment, or at least, move into a more full-time role with this business. And I feel like I can't right now
Uh-huh.
to the degree that I would prefer, just because at any minute my kid is going to be, I mean, I know that they're going to be exposed, because our school that they're at right now has the most percentage, the biggest percentage for our region, or city at least. And it's, it's not a
Uh-huh.
cakewalk right now. So we're still like in the middle, in the throes, I guess. And I guess
That's
just
right.
women,
And
having, a lot of women have had to leave the workforce in the past year and a half just because of that very issue. Go ahead.
no, that's I'm right there with you. I agree. I think it's hard because we don't even know, are we going to fully get rid of COVID, or is it going to turn into something like the flu, where it's there and maybe it's
Yeah.
not going to, be as harmful as it is right now, but we're going to have to keep getting vaccines every year,
Yeah.
and it's something we have to live with, and there could be quarantine situations for a long time to come. We just don't know. So I think I agree with
Right.
you on that, where one parent does kind of need to be ready to go if the kids need to come home and do school virtually.
Right. And
And
as we're
yeah, and
looking at the endemic, then I'm hoping that employers, those of us who, do work for, I guess I don't technically work for an employer currently, I'm an independent contractor, but for the people who do, I just hope that those
yeah,
corporations and managers and, whoever the decision makers are going to have to, be willing to be more flexible for that very reason. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I hope so too, for the very reason that you mentioned of we don't want to see more women having to leave the workplace because they can't manage, the expectations of their employer, plus all of the responsibilities that come at home with their kids. I mean, it is a really tough place to be. And my hope is that companies, every single person in every company across the world has been impacted by this pandemic and has experienced, if you're not a frontline worker, and you have a job that can be done from home, you know how challenging that is, especially if you do have a family. So again, I hope the compassion and the empathy will be there. On the same token, I do understand the need for in-person collaboration to some degree, right? There are
Oh yeah.
times where that is really important for innovation, for team
Hmm.
building, camaraderie, and for productivity. I get that.
Yeah.
And so again, I do think it comes down to that balance of the flexibility for the employees in all aspects of their lives, but also preserving the company culture and the performance as well. And how do we get to that place? And time will tell.
So with Passion Fit, would you say that you
Mhm.
are helping women who have already experienced burnout recover? Or would you say it's more preventative? Or do you have a much broader? I guess I keep talking about burnout because we talked that, that might be part of the theme of our conversation today. But I'm
Yeah.
assuming, I mean, do you really have to balance the physical fitness and the food and the sleep and stress relief? What is your main focus?
Right. So, my focus is it's both preventative and it's also management, right? And that could be whether it's burnout, whether it's disease prevention and management, whether it's just,
Hmm.
protecting your overall health and well-being for various reasons. And so my philosophy and my thought is very holistic in nature. And the thinking is if you are able to move your body every day, to focus on your nutrition and making sure you are eating foods that fuel you and give you energy and prevent or help manage diseases, that you are sleeping because that's really important for your cognitive abilities, and managing your stress and anxiety through things like mindfulness, and then practicing whatever that balance looks like for you. If you can focus holistically on those things, then you're able to better manage your personal life and your professional life and hopefully find success in however you define success for yourself in both. And it's something that, there are many elements to it, but my philosophy is on taking it one step at a time, being very simple with the changes that you want to make in your life so that they're attainable, and then adding on and adding on so that ultimately these things become just daily habits in your life that you don't have to think about so much anymore. But knowing that you have them in your toolkit and you have them in your daily practices will just help you again to be more successful in your personal and professional life. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. And you had mentioned earlier, do you only work with women? And I will say I work with men as well when I'm working with companies and larger
Okay.
organizations.
Right.
So a lot of my philosophies and my products and services could also benefit men as well. And a lot of times when I'm working with the women, I'm thinking of them as a whole person. So I'm thinking of them, including their children or their husbands or significant others or others in their
Hmm.
lives, so that I can reach more than just the woman, but starting with the woman and then all of those around her. And then again, when I work with companies, it's everybody.
Right. When I started this podcast, that's one thing I really wanted to focus on is not just the work. And that's what I tell my guests is like, I really want to hear 50% of what you have experienced working from home, and how that includes, if you have a family, how you manage your household routines and things like that. It's so much bigger than just literally the work you're doing at some computer or something like that. Do you want to talk a little bit about your lifestyle and how you're balancing your own work right now, especially when you do get busy with traveling and things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right. It's definitely been challenging, because we've also moved in the middle of this, this summer. So we kind of went from the pandemic and virtual school for the kids and working from home. Then we were doing hybrid school. Then we went into summer break and we moved. And so I'm kind of building my business, in a new way down here. I'm sort of keeping things going the way they were, but I'm also trying to grow and expand. So, and I just launched a book this summer. So it's been busy to manage all of that. And then, my kids starting new schools, going full time. My husband's still working remotely right now. So, for me, it's been just being very organized. Like for me, that creates peace and calmness if I, have a to-do list, if I have my calendar blocked with the thing I need to do, not only for my family and for my work, but also for my own self-care. So I will block out time for mindfulness in the mornings, for my, exercise. I kind of do meal planning and plan out what I'm going to make for the week. And, all of those things really do add up. And I am a very big believer in practicing what I preach. So I always want to make sure that whatever I'm sharing with my clients and the organizations that I work with, that I'm actually doing them myself. And it's a really good check and balance. And I'm also very honest with my clients and, with people that, yeah, I can get into that circle again of getting close to burnout, and I have to continue to monitor it and, watch, how I'm managing my personal and professional life too. It happens to all of us. And I think in the pandemic, we've all been thrown into an uncertain situation. And it's hard. We all have our really difficult days. And then we have our days where we feel resilient and strong and that we can handle it. And then we get thrown into some chaos again. And it's part of being human, right? And I think that that's the difficulty in it, but also the beauty in it too.
Oh yeah. I know that I also like to speak about things like ergonomics and productivity and time management. And I slip, and then you come back and you're basically just trying to make forward progress, and keep, 2 step forward, 1 step back instead of, always regressing. You talked a little bit ago about the allergies and that stress and the, whatever. I experienced that myself. I had a move across the country, and I think it like triggered some sort of stress. I had a tick bite in the same week that we were moving, and it was just like one thing on top of another. And then I started to really have those allergies flare up like you talked about. And I learned that it has a lot to do with inflammation, and that stress can also cause a lot of inflammation and reducing, especially if you are having the extra stressful lifestyle. I think a lot of times we stress eat and start putting in even more irritants into our body as a result. And it's just going to be like a massive flare up. And I had no idea that allergies stack on top of each other, and that someone explained it to me like boxes. And there's like a threshold at the top where you're going to start to show the symptoms. And so I didn't know I was allergic to eggs or my cat, or that I even had seasonal allergies. It was actually when I introduced my cat into the picture that I broke over, the top and started experiencing seasonal allergies all of a sudden, for the first time in my life. So managing, the stress level helps me keep my allergy symptoms under control. And it's really interesting how it all ties together.
It really does. Yeah. And something that you would just kind of mistake for environmental or food or pets. Because I'm like you, growing up in the Midwest in Wisconsin, I never had allergies. And it wasn't until 9 to 10 years after moving and living in California, Northern California at the time, that I started to develop these allergies. And I went to an allergist and got all the testing and everything. And it was to trees and like you, cats and grass and molds that come out of the soil when it rains. I mean, who knew all of these things, right? But to your point, that inflammation and that stress allows it to linger in your body and also become worse and create other complications. Like for me, it was the allergy-induced asthma. And I have found natural remedies for myself that have worked really well, like saline salts, nasal sprays, and just, doing that every morning is a natural way to clear out allergens, and then drinking hot water with lemon and honey to really sort of keep, the asthma from getting worse. You kind of find those things.
I learned a lot about raw honey in the last 10 years.
Oh my gosh. It's your best friend, right?
Local raw honey.
Yes, that exactly. Local raw honey is huge for whatever environmental allergies you're facing. But yeah, I mean, it is all related. And again, it goes back to, why I'm so passionate about a holistic approach to wellness, because so many things are affecting one another in your life, personally, professionally, mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, and how you manage it and handle it could make a huge difference in whether you have to continue to suffer or where you can seek relief and maybe overcome some of those health issues that can come about from stress and the environment.
I want to ask you a little bit about your TED Talk and what you are asked to present at some of these corporations. Is that like an employee education type thing? And also more about your book. So go ahead and kind of talk us through some of those things.
Yeah. So yeah, through my TEDx talk and then, a lot of the speaking that I do at companies, it is, a lot of times working with HR professionals, it's working with women in those organizations, as well as just cross-functionally everyone in the organization. And it is about employee health and well-being. It's about strengths-based coaching, growth mindset, employee engagement, all of those types of topics that, again, really do affect the employee as a whole and can, help them to be at their best, both on the job and within their teams, but also personally as well. Because as we've said many times, I think in our conversation today, it is all related. So that is definitely a huge focus. And then my book, The Wellness Empowered Woman, there are definitely things that I've talked about in my TEDx talk and in a lot of my speaking that are in the book as well. But the focus there is telling. It's not a memoir per se, but I do share a lot of my own personal stories, my own struggles, my own victories, as well as anonymous stories of my clients, because I've worked with hundreds and now thousands of clients over the last 7 years. So it's sharing so that people can really feel like they can relate to different situations and stories. They can feel like they're not alone. And then I have a lot of research and a lot of tips and advice and suggestions in that sort of holistic wellness approach, so that you can kind of pick and choose what's going to work for you and make the most sense for you. So it's really meant to be like a guide. It's a self-development, self-help book that is uplifting, but it also is very empathetic to the challenges and struggles that we all face. And I share my own as well, which I will say, I get vulnerable in the book, and I do share a lot of the struggles that I've had. And I wanted to do that, as much as that was hard to do at first, to put myself out there. I wanted to do that because I felt in being vulnerable myself, I can really help a lot of people, because then they'll know that they're not alone, and they might be able to share in some of
Right.
those struggles themselves and see that there are solutions and there are ways to, come out of those difficult times in your life. And, change and transformation is possible for anyone at any stage in life.
What about your clients who work from home? About what percentage of the people that you work with make up that population? People who are entrepreneurs working from home, or employees or business owners who work from home?
Yeah, I would say it's probably half and half. I mean, I definitely work with a lot of people. And again, right now, everybody's, for them, unless they're a frontline worker, everyone's
Yeah.
working from
Yeah.
home. But pre-pandemic and kind of maybe what they'll get into post-pandemic, I would say it is a mix of both.
Hmm.
Again, lots of different professions, some that do require you to be on site or in the office, and others that are more remote in nature. So, my solutions and my feedback and advice obviously is customized to each of their needs, because even if you're working from home, as we know, that has its own challenges,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like trying to find that boundary between work and home life, and how
Hmm.
much it's been blurred in the last year and a half, it can be challenging as well. So there's that. And then for those that are working in an office, that has its challenges with maybe, not being able to have as much flexibility during the day, dealing with traffic and commuting and, all of that. So I think there's pros and cons to both, and each individual is going to react to those things differently. And so I really try to understand each person and their situation, and how I can help them and create solutions for them that meet their needs.
Right. And like when someone does leave a corporate job or chooses to take the remote position at their corporate job, it doesn't mean that all the problems are
Uh,
solved. That,
right.
even if you might be trading problems or challenges or frustrations. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, about what kinds of things do you see people struggling with when they do start working from home, and any tips on overcoming that?
Yeah, I think probably one of the bigger ones that I see, and I guess it depends on the personality type, but you're not, with people as much. So it can be a little bit isolating and can be a little bit lonely when you go from being in an office and collaborating with a team in a conference room and, having lunch with your coworkers, to then all of a sudden you're home and you're on calls and you're talking to people all day, but it's not the same. I know for me, I'm an extrovert. I gain energy from my
Mhm.
relationships and working with other people, right? And sounds like you're
Yep.
similar.
Me too.
So
Yep.
that for me was, yeah, that's right. I completely feel you on that. And I knew this when I was making the change. So I tried to be proactive and get ahead of that. And, I build in opportunities to have in-person meetings, meeting with my corporate clients, going to conferences and networking, making sure I have business lunches scheduled. I teach fitness and dance classes every morning, so I would have that opportunity to see my local wellness community every morning. And so I think if you build in, and again, with the pandemic, it's been a little bit harder to build in all of those in-person interactions, but things have opened up and there are opportunities to do it safely. Go grab lunch in an outdoor restaurant with, a business partner or something like that. Building those things in can help. So I think it's important to kind of know your personality and where you gain energy from and where you're depleted of your energy as well, and make sure to, again, take care of those things by either scheduling things to allow you to connect with other people, or if maybe you have too much of that, maybe the other flip side is Zoom fatigue is just too much for you. Make sure you take time away from your screens to really, get some fresh air and clear your head and kind of get away from technology for a while.
When I first started working from home, I was doing medical transcription for Mayo Clinic, a pretty well-known medical facility. And I wasn't really like trying to climb the corporate ladder at that point, and wasn't really needing to do a lot of collaboration, that networking that people do in order to get projects and promotions. So I did have a little bit of chatter with some of my coworkers just to like problem solve and then say hello. But for the most part, I just had to ramp up my social life. Find a way to host things in my home and bring people over and, be in the community and find ways to be out. So I wasn't alone. I joined a pottery class for a little while, started a women's group and a few other things. But I've had to just be intentional about the social side where I, interviewing now, so many people for the podcast, I hear more about the, people feel like they're missing the opportunities for promotions and the good projects by not being on site.
That's a good point. Yeah, there is some of that. And now I hope, again, the optimist in me hopes that promotions and some of that stuff won't only be looked at for those that are in the office, because maybe a higher percentage of the team will be working remotely post-pandemic anyway. So in order to make it fair and equitable for everybody, you kind of have to look at it from both ends and not necessarily penalize people if they're working remotely and not in the office. I mean, that's going to be a company by company thing, right? And cultures are going to shift and vary, but that'll be interesting to see. And I can understand, like you're saying, where that can be a challenge for people as well.
You said you've been teaching fitness and dance classes in the mornings. Are those in person, or did you do any of that online?
Yeah, so since the pandemic, I've been doing it all over live stream. I've brought it all online just because it's been difficult to, I was renting space at a studio in the Bay Area, and I was teaching for a couple of external studios and gyms. And again, this is something that I just do like an hour a day every morning. And it's great because it allows me to work out with others, build that community, do something good for all of our health. And so I wanted to make sure that when we hit the pandemic, that we would be able to maintain that community. And it was important to me to be there as a wellness resource for all of my clients. I didn't want them to just suddenly feel like they're in the dark. Now there's nowhere to go. What are they going to do to focus on their movement and fitness every day? So yeah, so thankfully, because I have a technology background and digital media background, it was very easy for me to bring it into a virtual live stream space. And I have equipment at home to be able to do that, which has been great. And I've done like one or two outdoor events, but I'm not regularly teaching in person yet. But I am missing that very much. And I'm hoping when it's safe to fully do so, that I'll be able to bring that back. And then I'm going to take a hybrid approach. So I will still offer live stream classes because I have found that that has worked very well for many of my clients. They don't have to get dressed and drive to a gym and deal with all of that. They can just log onto their computers and I'm there for them. So I'm going to keep offering that a few times a week. And then I'll offer in-person classes for the local community when it's safe to do so as well.
So I know we're going to have to wrap up in the next few minutes, but I'm always a little nosy, and I'm just curious how people make it work in their own home. I'm working out of a closet right now, but I have a podcast and I was singing songs with my ESL students in the middle of the night, and that has worked for me. Where in your home are you teaching a fitness class? Did you have a spare room or a basement or something that was ready for that? Or did you have to really make it happen?
Yeah.
You've had two houses you've been doing this in.
I know, that's right. It's funny. I've been very scrappy with it. We had our house in the Bay Area. We're actually, this house right now, we're renting this house because we're building a house up one street over that won't be ready until the end of September. So we'll be moving again in about 4 to 5 weeks, and then I'll have a new space. I've been working in the kitchen because my husband's been using the home office. My kids have desks in their room. So I always joke that I'm like, I'm the one that's in the open space in the kitchen. And then I always have to tell people if I'm doing an interview or I'm on a Zoom conference call, like, Mommy's in the kitchen. Please be quiet. Please don't grab a snack before my call. They don't always listen, but
Yep.
and then teaching, I basically teach like in my living room. I just find an open space with good lighting and where, sound quality and Wi-Fi quality is good. And I'm able to teach. Every once in a while, I've tried it in the backyard, but I find that the Wi-Fi isn't as great. And then you have wind and sound quality issues.
Yeah.
But in our new home, I'm finally going to have my own home office. So I'm very excited for that. And then we're going to dedicate one of the garage spaces to making it like a fitness studio. So then I'll be able to do my live stream classes from there. So I'm looking forward to having some dedicated spaces coming soon. But up until then, yeah, sometimes you just have to be scrappy and just find places and make it work. So don't let that deter you if you want to be able to work remotely or do things virtually, because I do think that virtual is here to stay. And even post-pandemic, we're going to hopefully have a good balance of virtual opportunities and ways to connect and meet as well as in person. So
Reena, where can people find you and your book and your TEDx talk?
Yeah, so you can find me on passionfit.com. That is my company website. If you want to subscribe to my free newsletter, if you want to check out all the different product services and offerings, you can go there. And then you can also get more details about the book at thewellnessempoweredwoman.com. It's just the title of the book, very easy. And you can link to that from passionfit.com as well. And then my TEDx talk, it's called Why Wellness is the Secret to Personal and Professional Success. And you can find that on the TED.com website or on their YouTube channel. So feel free to check it out. And I hope that these resources are helpful, and feel free to reach out if I can help in any way.
Do you have any final thoughts that you would want to share with someone who's on the edge, thinking about maybe working from home, or, maybe coming back from the pandemic, or maybe being, out because of burnout and coming back? Any advice to help people have a little bit better chance at success?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, take some time to really self-reflect and think about kind of what you've been through, what we've all been through in the last 15 plus months. Think about, what energizes you? What are you passionate about? How do you like to work? What could be, if you could create your ideal working situation, what would that look like? Would it be working from home 100% of the time? Would that include maybe working on site as well, or going to an office? And try to map out what that could look like for you, so that then when you do go back or re-enter into the workforce, then you'll be able to pinpoint opportunities or have really good conversations with your boss or your management team about what you ideally want, and just be willing to be flexible with that and be willing to negotiate and find what's going to work for you. And I would just say, don't forget to take care of and well-being. I think we've all realized, especially after what we've been through, how important mental health is, how important our physical health is, and just make sure that you're doing those things to take care of yourself, whether it's what you're eating, how you're moving, how you're sleeping, how you're managing your stress and your work and home life. And just know that you're not alone. And everybody has gone through struggles, and those challenging times will pass, and you can be strong and resilient, and it's up to you, and you can do it.
Thank you so much, Reena, for your time today. We appreciate that you were able to come and share with us. And I guess this is it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, April. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you so much. This has been April Malone with Reena Vokoun, and yes, I work from home. We'll see you next time.